So earlier this season, we watched a movie where a bunch of people were trapped on a deadly boat. And now we've watched a movie where people are trapped on a deadly train. You know what movies where everyone's trapped in a deadly car? Can we go for the transportation trifecta?
Possibly. We could do Snakes on a Plane if we want a plane version.
Would Speed count? It's on a bus.
Ooh, yeah, that would fit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really horror, though.
And Speed is kind of a good movie, isn't it?
Well, I shouldn't say it's a very good movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I remember it being
a
good movie. But there's also movies I remember being good that have fit prominently into our podcast. So, it should.
Oh, like Weekend at Bernie's last week or 2 weeks ago? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Exactly.
Or like me with what was it, fucking No Holds Barred? I loved it as a kid, and then we watched it, and I was like,
terrible.
Fuck. I'm an idiot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that movie was definitely written for like 8-year-old boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Not 40-year-old men, I guess. I don't know who this shit was written for.
This was written to display the amazing magical skills of one David Copperfield. I feel like this movie was actually made just so that they could put those skills on screen.
You think he bankrolled it? He was like, listen, I need to show my magic to a larger group of people.
Yeah.
What do you say there's really no reason for him to be in this.
No.
It's a very flimsy pretense.
Absolutely. They just sneak that in. I'm pretty sure that he definitely helped fund part of this process.
That was his greatest trick of all. Getting himself in this movie. Welcome to Bad Movies and Beer. I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
And today, by special request, we are discussing Terror Train, the late 70s, early 80s, I think it was 1980. Jamie Lee Curtis, one of her last Scream Queen appearances, and probably the worst, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, so she's known for being a part of the slasher films, and she fits right into this pretty well. I think we'll get into that stuff, but seeing her there built some confidence for me that this was going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, her being there is probably enough to carry this thing to at least some degree of respectability. But I guess we'll get to that when we get to our ratings. As I mentioned, this was a special request by one of our Instagram followers, now showing.
Nice. So obviously a movie buff there.
Oh, clearly, yes. Yeah. And they've actually reached out to us a couple times before, just, light conversation and stuff. But happy to do this request. I think this is a good one. Thank you for that, now showing. And before we get into it, we have paired this movie with a beer, as we always do. Why don't you tell the folks what we're going to be drinking today, Noel?
This one is a pretty sweet slam dunk. The Terror Train takes place on an old steam train. The whole movie goes down there, and we're drinking a beer from Railway City Brewing Company. Just super easy to connect those two dots. And the train on the can itself is basically the same train that the movie takes place on. It's pretty
I think
sweet.
It might literally be.
Yeah, it's the same kind of, well, not the exact
same. The movie was made in Canada, though. You never know. It could be.
That is true.
Filmed in Canada.
Yeah, Canadian movie. It could be the same train, which would be pretty funny and pretty awesome.
I feel like the brewery would hype that up more, though. They'd be like, come see the train from Terror Train.
So this place, the brewery itself, Railway City, is in St. Thomas, Ontario. It's kind of like a quaint, smaller town. And the brewery is right downtown in an older building. They have a bunch of different styles. We visited them almost a decade ago, I'd say.
Yeah, they've been in business for a while, right?
Yeah, 2008. Yep. Yeah, they've been around for a long time making craft beer in Ontario. And I've had some of their stuff that's been really good. The one we're drinking today is First Class. It's their IPA. It was a pretty fancy train that these kids were on in this movie, and it feels appropriate. I'm excited to drink this. I know it's an IPA, which maybe you're not super excited for, but I think it'll be good. There's a quote on the back here that I thought was pretty funny. It said, "Step into the luxurious world of First Class, brewed to transport your taste buds on an unforgettable adventure." And that's exactly what the kids took on this Terror Train.
Yeah, but unfortunately not what we took as an audience. This is not exactly a luxurious first-class horror movie adventure.
Oh.
It's got some moments, though. It's got some moments. Why don't we crack these open and get into it?
Yeah, I'm down.
We open with a roaring fire and some thumping new wave music, and as the camera tilts up, we find ourselves at a party with a group of students from Northern Illinois University. Go Huskies! This party is being thrown by the Sigma Phi Omega fraternity, and the first dialogue we get is a couple of the brothers hyping up a particularly nerdy-looking kid that tonight's the night he's going to finally get laid. Not only that, but we quickly learn that Jamie Lee Curtis is the one who's going to be popping his cherry, so to speak. Now, I don't know about you, but considering that he's a new pledge and clearly the low man on the totem pole in this frat, I feel like alarm bells should have already been sounding even before they pointed him towards Jamie Lee. Not that that excuses what's going to happen here, but, come on.
I mean, in Canada, we don't really have fraternities in the same way they do in America, so we don't experience this kind of life. But from what I've learned from watching media, like part of the whole deal is that the older members of the frat kind of mess with the younger members. But the younger members have to be suspecting shit is going to be happening to them.
But aren't they all younger? Like, I thought they were older too, but then they say this is like when they were freshmen. So they're all freshmen. I think they're just like more handsome and popular.
Yeah, well, what we learned was that some of them wear beanies, and you have to wear this like zone beanie if you haven't been laid before. Like only the virgins wear the beanies. The guys who are performing the pranks on others, they don't have the beanies on. So clearly that is sort of the stepping stone within this fraternity. If you've had sex before, you have a higher power ranking within here.
I think that's true of life, though, don't you?
Early life.
Yeah, okay.
I think later life, it matters less, or I guess you would assume
everyone is.
Yeah. In teenage
years. There are
no
virgins in the nursing home, is what you're saying?
No, not with the amount of banging that those old people do.
God damn, they bang so much.
Yeah, that's why the STI rates are so high in those places.
They're huge. Well, because they also come from an era when nobody wore dong bags.
Yeah,
so.
why are you wrapping it up?
We've taken a real left turn here.
So some of the members of the fraternity have created a bit of a prank here. They've convinced one of the virgin members that Jamie Lee Curtis is going to have sex with him. She heads up to the apartment or the room, the frat house. This place is a little freaky. They've got like some funky lights and like a bunch of shit everywhere. I guess the decorations in that place are going to be pretty eclectic, but it's kind of an interesting horror-esque setup already. She heads up to a bedroom, one in which has like a massive 4-poster bed and all kinds of like sheets and curtains on that bed coming down. They're really setting up a special moment for this guy's first bang.
Yeah, now you mentioned that there's a very kind of freaky design to this whole house. You say that, I just say they're setting the mood, man.
Oh yeah,
that's just all this is.
Yeah, all of
flashing
the, like,
road signs and stuff doesn't get you revved up. Come on.
Yeah, all kinds of different lights and stuff going on there.
Yeah. Now, this kid, Kenny is his name. He does enter the room, like you said, kind of sheepishly. You can tell he's very nervous about this. But he finds a shadowy female form on that 4-post bed that you mentioned. Now, we know this is not Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's hiding behind a curtain. Her role in this is just to talk him into undressing and climbing in, which he does very shyly. Although I have to say, the yellow panties this dude is wearing do not seem like the underwear of an unconfident man.
Yeah, I would describe them as tighty whities, but they were yellow.
They look like silky, though, also.
Yeah, well, maybe he knew this was coming. He was going to put on some special undies for her because he knew that he was going to bone down tonight.
Or, considering what happens later, is this a sign that he is actually like cross-dressing or, possibly
moving in different places? Yeah. Maybe. I just took it as like underwear for the time, to be honest. I felt like that was just something that
I believe that was underwear for the time.
Yeah, I feel like in the late 70s and 80s, there was not a lot of boxers or boxer briefs.
Like fucking Charles Bronson is out there in 1980 wearing those yellow panties.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No fucking chance.
Yeah,
Come
that
on.
guy has got like the most soft, silky underwear on for sure.
Yeah, there's no chance. Anyway, when Kenny finally goes to kiss the person he believes is Jamie Lee Curtis, her body literally falls apart. Turns out that shadowy figure was actually a series of cobbled together body parts from the med school morgue. And honestly, good job by these frat guys. If you're looking for a hilarious prank, there is nothing funnier than making a virgin commit necrophilia.
Oh my God. I mean, he didn't put his inside the corpse.
No.
He didn't take off those undies. He kept them on. But holy shit. At first, I was curious whether this was a like fake corpse or not. Like, I didn't know whether the prank was to put like a dummy in there. When we find out quickly after this they are med students, you realize that it was a real body.
Yeah,
and
man.
some other pieces. It is actually decent makeup.
Good job by them. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I think the frat brothers did the prank.
Well,
I think this is legit. If you're in med school, you're going to be seeing dead bodies. I think this is humorous.
Well-
in polite society, no, but they're all going to be encountering whatever. It's less offensive, I feel.
I mean, fairly offensive for the family, probably, of the bodies or
that's a
people
great
of
point.
the
Yes.
corpse that is taken and used in this
I did not
circumstance.
consider the body and
Yeah.
the person that it once was.
Yeah. So I'm not sure about that. Kenny doesn't take it very well. So, of course.
Oh, God. That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, thinking he is going to be having sex for the first time and finding a corpse in that bed leads him to stand up and start spinning in circles and really freaking the fuck out.
Well, yeah, and as you mentioned, there's these kind of sheer curtains hanging down from that 4-post bed. So he ends up getting all tangled up in those and then collapsing, which kills him, maybe? It wasn't totally clear at this point.
That's what I thought, too. My first impression was that he had died. Like, that this had
Broken
gone
neck, hung
so
himself.
wrong that, yeah, he had hung himself in there. We find out afterwards, and not too long afterwards, that he does survive this, but he is hospitalized because of it, and we know that there's going to be some consequences. We can see really clearly how they're lining up this terror train.
They do lay it out for us pretty clearly, yes. And after a short opening credit sequence featuring the somewhat haunting outline of a shadowy train, we're greeted by the Sigma Phi members and a time jump. It's now 4 years in the future. They're about to graduate from pre-med, and they're throwing one last big college party on a train. Little do they know that it isn't a regular train they're about to board. It's a terror train.
Oh, man. The one big difference in this movie and in our Death Ship episode from earlier is that the train itself is not the one that is creating the killings, which is...
No, that's true.
Right? The killings are going to come from people on the train or a person on the train.
They should have called this Terror on a Train.
Yeah.
It's less, rolls off the tongue less
yeah,
nicely.
It is definitely sounds better to be called Terror Train, but if we're comparing those two, that's the one big difference here. This train was not used by Nazis during the World War, so we didn't have that backstory.
That is true, yes. Yeah.
Now, could they have done that with a train scenario? Absolutely. We could have taken
European trip.
Yeah,
there you go.
There is a Terror Train 2.
Okay.
So maybe Terror Train 2 is in Europe. We don't know.
I'd watch that. Or wait, would I watch that after this one? I don't know.
I don't know. So all of these drunk college kids start pouring out of a bus as they arrive at this steam train adventure. They're all costumed up. So this is going to lend itself to some like really good horror movie stuff here. When we get all of these people all in costumes, it's going to be easy to pull this off. I mean, this is smart.
Yeah.
This is smart costuming in terms of like being able to get away with stuff. This is not like the Orient Express where like it's a
everyone's
mystery death and everyone is nice.
Yeah.
This is like everyone's in a costume, drunk as fuck, and they're looking to party. This is going to be an easy way for a killer to get in and to pull some shit off.
Yeah, these kids are already having a great time. Like you said, they're very drunk, laughing and dancing and telling terrible, terrible jokes. But as we see, they aren't the only ones who are piling into this thing. There's also a certain legendary 80s magician who is struggling with a very heavy crate. And here is where we get that generous David Copperfield cameo.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, right? Like, growing up as a child of the 80s, David Copperfield definitely is a recognizable face.
He was the magician.
Yeah. Like he was the one who was in Vegas doing all of the cool shows, right?
Dating Claudia Schiffer, or married to her, wasn't he?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe,
man.
yeah. So he almost predates us. Like we definitely are. He was sort of our parents' magician, I would say.
Yeah, his fame, I think, was kind of waning towards the like mid-late 90s.
Yeah.
I remember one time in university, I was in a thrift shop and there was a David Copperfield like t-shirt on one of the racks, and I did not buy it.
You thought about it for a second because practical magic is cool. But,
I thought about it because it was like just his eyes and all it said was Copperfield. And I was like, ooh. And then I thought about it some more and I was like,
nobody's going to get this reference. My mom's going to be happy, but everyone else is going to think I'm a dweeb.
There you go. Well, these kids are in for a real first-class train ride, as long as nothing goes wrong beforehand. But I'm sure in that scenario, the train's conductor would just radio for help. Or not, as we quickly learn that there is, in fact, no way for them to contact the outside world once they leave the station.
Maggie, I wish to hell they'd put a radio on that train. What if one of those kids got drunk and fell off? I've been talking on that for 2 years. Belknap always puts the kibosh on it. He says we ain't Amtrak, we're just a little old excursion train.
Now, I'm curious, is this enough for him to get prophetic old man status for you, or?
Yeah, he was on the verge. Like, this was close. He is definitely the character that is going to be helping push the exposition along here and, like, play a more prominent role than I expected.
Yeah, same. He's in this, like, heavy towards the end, and I was a little surprised. But I think he's kind of playing that, like, role of, like, Quint in Jaws, you know what I mean? where it's the seasoned train veteran who's going to like steer these kids through this and be there for Jamie Lee Curtis to like cry on.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. They thought that they needed someone capable to bring them out of this, and clearly he's setting the stage for problems to come with that radio comment. We know that things aren't going to go well on this train, and the director and the writers wanted us to know that there was no help a-coming.
Well, things actually go wrong before they even get on the train. One of the frat brothers, this guy Ed, who is allegedly hilarious, telling a bunch of old-timey dirty jokes with a Groucho Marx mask on, he gets killed before they're even on board, man. The killer just runs a sword through his torso, which we don't actually see. He just kind of staggers out. But because he's such a jokester, when people see him with a full-on fucking gaping torso wound, they're just like, oh, Ed, classic.
Yeah, they can see the sword through him, and you see the blood start pouring out, but they just think it is another practical joke from Ed. The killer, though, has disposed of their first body, and they take that sword and that Groucho Marx mask, and they slide that body right underneath the wheels of the train. They're going to try to dispose of that evidence quickly.
Oh, and they do. The train runs him over, and that's it for old Ed. But since nobody knows this has happened, the rest of the frat members start partying immediately, just having a great time, while the conductor and a crew member get into a debate about the future of transportation that sure feels like a padding scene for me, although it does let us know the conductor is counting down the days to retirement, so maybe that's something. Now, in order to retire, he's going to need to sell a whole bunch of RVs in his side job. I guess he owns a dealership. But this kid from this crew is like, you'll never sell them. We're going back to the steam engine. Trains are the future. Something tells me this guy's been spending a little too much time in the boiler room. You know what I'm saying?
You mean he's been huffing too many of those coal fumes as they're burning off? Yeah. I don't know why, but I found that this debate was kind of engaging and interesting in a weird way. That says more about me than the movie.
Well, I'm like, what is it doing here, though? Why are they talking about this?
I don't know. Someone wanted to make a point about it, and the kid, the coal kid, does make the point that like all of your goods are going to be coming on trains for the most part.
And he says gas is expensive, which, God, if he only knew.
Yeah, exactly. If we're comparing that to now, then there would be some truth in that, although I think trucks bring the majority of the goods once they've arrived on that train and got to their regular location. So it's a bit of both now. I don't know. But we don't really need to go into that too detail.
We do not. Technological determinism aside, everyone's in good spirits right now except David Copperfield, who's kind of acting like a diva as he looks out at the college revelers.
It's a rotten crowd.
I thought you said you played frat parties before.
They're not gonna watch.
Oh, they'll watch. Go out and do some close-up magic. Warm them up.
I'm not ready.
Calling his look here intense is like calling the sun hot. Doesn't really capture the full scope of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's true. He is definitely acting like a diva. They're doing a couple things here. Right before they show him, they have a conversation between Jamie Lee Curtis and her friend Mitchie, I think is her name. She's kind of the other main woman. She was also a part of that prank that went wrong with
She's like the hottie of the group.
Yeah.
Or positioned that way.
Yeah, she's kind of the more promiscuous version of all of them as well. They're kind of setting her up here. They're doing a bit of exposition that's setting this up to make it feel like Kenny, that kid from the opening scene, is going to be the one trying to get revenge. They're already like setting that up as a bit of a story here, or at least to me. Although what they're suggesting too is that there might be something going on with Copperfield. They're giving us the two, like that he's going to be the killer. They're definitely trying to set that up a little bit.
Well, this fucking smoldering look, man, it definitely looks like he wants to murder those kids. Fuck, did we just solve this whole movie right now? That's it, right?
Well, they are making it look like Copperfield is maybe Kenny in the future, and that he is going to take this out. Now, I didn't really believe it. And
no, that theory comes up later. I'm like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
It's been 4 years. It hasn't been like 20 years.
Yeah, you would still recognize him. I mean, he's not going to be that talented in smoldering. Now, Kenny did dabble in magic, so he was aware of it.
Well, okay, when do we learn that? Because I don't remember them saying it until the very end.
No, they do. In that starting like bonfire scene, there is some conversation of him and magic. They do place like one line in there, but we don't get much of it.
I missed that one line, so I was very surprised with some of the choices they make later on. Anyway, our next scene tells us that with the benefit of time and distance and maturity, these frat guys have realized the weight of the horrible prank they pulled 4 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. They basically laugh/brag about it to a couple of other seniors before Jamie Lee Curtis enters the car and puts them in their place. No, I'm just kidding again. They all shrug it off and start gleefully singing about getting drunk. What was that movie we watched before where every character deserved to die? Was it Beneath?
Ooh, yeah, there was no one who was likable.
That's how I'm starting to feel about these guys, honestly.
Yeah, they're really setting up that group of people who pulled that stunt for us not to care about them. The only one who felt some guilt about it was Jamie Lee Curtis, and so maybe she's going to be the one who gets through here. I'm already feeling like we're going to have a Scooby-Doo ending.
That's exactly what we get.
I've written it in my notes. I'm like, this is going to be a Scooby-Doo ending here. I start really paying attention to characters and their dress at this point because I'm like, I want to figure out who the old man is that they're going to tear the mask off of to show and reveal.
Sherlock Nolan's got his detective cap on.
Oh, yeah. I am ready for it at this point.
All right. Well, after another brief RVs versus trains scene, we get to see the killer in action. They tease him murdering Mitchie, the, again, sort of promiscuous one of the group. Before he can off her, one of the OG frat brothers, Jackson, stumbles in a dinosaur costume. He asks the masked figure, who he assumes is Ed, that comedian from before, if he wants a drink, but we know the only drink this character wants is a tall, cool glass of revenge. So it comes as no surprise when he murders Jackson in the bathroom by smashing his head through a mirror. But what did come as a surprise to me was the fact that this dinosaur costume is arguably better than the one we saw in the Velocipaster earlier this season. Despite being like 35 years earlier.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's a good throwback. That Velocipaster costume was just trash. See, this to me was more of like a lizard man costume, but even with that, I think it's still a better costume than the one from Velocipaster, which is hilarious.
You're right. He might have been a lizard. I don't know. I immediately went to the dinosaur.
That's pretty good. Now, I really like the Groucho Marx mask that the killer has on here.
Yeah. I wonder how the estate of Groucho Marx felt about that.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's really effective because it's leaving a lot of room for eye expression. Like, it's a silly mask, but for some reason, the way that it fits or the way they have it on is allowing the killer, the person playing the killer, to do some really effective, like, funny eye expression movements. And we know it's the killer, but it's effective in the like kind of wink to us in the way that it's acting behind that mask. And I was enjoying that aspect of it. The one cool part about being on this train is the lighting and shots are kind of limited, but they're using it effectively, right? Like, it sort of limits the scope of what you can show, but it allows them to do a bunch of like close-ups and different light and different like emotions with the facial expressions. And I think they're doing a good job of that here.
Well, yeah, it's got to almost all be close-ups because of just the physical limitations of being in a train. I actually had some thoughts about that when we get to our ratings later on. It's time for some character development in our next scene as we find out a couple of basic points about this friend group. First, that the most objectively handsome one, Doc, he goes by, is a massive dick. We learn this when he sells it his alleged best friend Mo, boyfriend of Jamie Lee Curtis, by telling her that this whole train party was actually his idea, not Mo's way of planning something fun for her. And Jamie Lee Curtis's response to this shows us that the prank from earlier really did have an effect on her.
You asshole. You can't have a good time without hurting somebody, can you? Is that why you told me it was your idea? Because I said I'd never go to another one of his fucking parties?
Elena, they're always walking out of my parties. But this time, you can't.
Fuck, that sounded ominous. Maybe this dude's the killer.
Throwing out a lot of red herrings here. They're really trying to just toss it all out there. But we know that it's going to be Kenny from the beginning. We know that he's going to make his way in here. And figuring out which one it is the question. But this is interesting, right? Because we're getting Jamie Lee Curtis doing her best acting here, pissed off at her rich boyfriend who has funded this whole thing because Doc, that asshole who planned that first stunt, has also planned this party.
Well, he also roofied some fucking juniors. He put something in the alcohol he gave them, right? Like,
yeah. No, I thought he poured the alcohol into another bottle and gave them water.
Oh,
he
no,
was holding a bottle of
putting
clear
something
liquor
in what he gave them, I thought.
Okay. Well, the way that I interpreted it was because he was holding a bottle of clear liquor.
Yep.
That wasn't an alcohol bottle. It was like a water bottle. I thought he had switched out the liquor for water. It was like he was giving them booze, but he wasn't actually giving them booze.
But how would they not be able to tell that?
If they're idiots who are drinking for the first time, they would be like, he might have just watered it down significantly. I think
it's more likely that he fucking like roofied them or something, and that's,
just to mess with them and have them pass out on the train. It's possible. This guy was willing to do pretty much anything to stir it up. Like, he just seemed like he liked causing shit. Even though at one point it's clear that he really like loves his buddy, like he wants his buddy to be okay. He sewers him here, and then he's going to sewer him again, try to get him caught with another woman later. And I just didn't understand that. I think he doesn't like Jamie Lee Curtis. I think he's trying to push her away from his best friend.
Well, it's clear that she doesn't like him, so I can see why he would feel that way. After another totally unnecessary aside with the train conductor, we finally get to see David Copperfield in action as he puts a cigarette through a quarter, smokes it, then makes the quarter disappear. Jamie Lee Curtis is impressed, but also a little upset. She was going to use that quarter to buy some hot nuts. But he's got that covered too. He waves his hand over the vending machine and the nuts come sliding right out. God damn it, that man is a showman. Unlike that old conductor, his close-up magic fucking sucks.
Yeah, this is pretty funny because we've got this side-by-side of Copperfield pulling off some pretty cool tricks. I'm sure he's used some magic to pull out his hot nuts plenty of times.
Come on.
But the old conductor with his card tricks are not really doing it, but he's showing that he's interested in like down with this magic too. I don't know why they're making him such a prominent part of the story, but I think they're just trying to bring something that sort of solidifies the choices here. I don't know.
Copperfield, you mean?
No, the old man.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was like, Copperfield's in there to pad this thing out, but also like, because honestly, I feel like his magic scenes are kind of the most entertaining part of this movie.
They are really cool.
Yeah.
And that's just because I'm a bit of a magic nerd. Like, I love that shit.
There you go.
But I really do feel like at some point he was just looking for a movie vehicle for his tricks. I don't know whether like it started with him being like, I need someone to write a story around me doing cool tricks, or if that movie was like written but needed another 20 minutes and they're like, you know who's popular? Copperfield.
I think that's very possible. After a failed attempt by Mo to patch things up with Jamie Lee Curtis, we get our first up-close look at Jackson's girlfriend, played by the lovely and talented Vanity. We saw her in The Last Dragon way back in our first season. And then we finally get the full Copperfield experience as he performs some much higher-end card tricks in front of a pulsing disco beat before making his assistant levitate and then disappear. This goes over big with the crowd, who did watch, thank you very much, but not with Doc, who dismisses Copperfield's magic in the most frat boy way possible.
You should have seen that magician. He was fantastic. Poof, just like that, the woman was gone.
I think he knows how to make one.
Nailed it. Way to go.
I'm gonna say probably. I assume that David Copperfield slayed ass in the 80s and 90s.
Wait, you're talking married to Claudia Schiffer.
So then, yeah, if you could lock down a super bottle, I assume that you can use your magic under the sheets as well as over top of them. So yeah, we have him do all of this sweet act. The disco in the background is hilarious, and the lighting and it all being kind of tight on the car is funny. When he makes the assistant appear and then reappear, it is here that I'm like, oh shit, it's the assistant.
Yeah, so the assistant is physically, I don't know how to phrase this. I don't want to say anything offensive, but like, it's pretty clear that something is going on physically with the assistant.
They do a close
she's
up.
Lanky and kind of like not super feminine, but also not super masculine. It's weird, kind of like an androgynous, like
very
thin,
androgynous character. So like when they get the transition and there's a bit of a close up with the assistant, you're like, I'm pretty sure that there's something hiding here.
Well, she's taller than Copperfield also, which
absolutely.
is like a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah.
Now, Doc was upset about the magic show. In his defense, apparently he never hired a magician, which sure seems suspicious. So they are really trying hard to convince us that Copperfield is the killer here. But instead of dwelling on that or investigating it, Doc and Mo decide that a much better idea would be to try to nail their friends' girlfriends. Seriously, this is what they try to do. Luckily, unlike those two, the conductor decides to do some non-sexual poking around, and when he uses his passkey to open a certain previously locked bathroom, he discovers Jackson's body. He should probably call for help, but we know there's no radio, so the next best option would most likely be to pull over to the side of the road and wait for someone passing by to notice them and provide assistance. There's just one problem, though. They're on a train, so score a point for RVs there, huh?
Yeah, damn, that coal boy -1. So we've got our first found body by the conductor. He doesn't want to create a panic, so he's not going to warn everyone yet that there is a killer on the loose, and he knows they can't call for help. They do a little bit of calculating, and they're about halfway. So by the time they turn around and head back...
I love that, too. I just think the worst case scenario. They are not closer to either destination. I'm like, that's a fun wrinkle.
Yeah, so they might as well just keep on going and hope that there are not more murders before they get the end. He does go and confide in his sort of second in command that he's found a body. And
it's called a brakeman.
Is that what their name is?
Yeah.
Ah, nice. I should know that. That's sweet. So his brakeman knows about it, and he's going to go show him the body. Before we do, though, I think we cut back to some more shenanigans with the boys and the girls that are not their girlfriends.
Oh, yeah, they're just liquoring them up and, trying to seal the deal, as it were, which, incidentally, Vanity, her character, she's Jackson's girlfriend. She's not super interested in this, but the other girl is all in on Mo, and that's going to lead to a little bit of tension later. Now, you mentioned that the conductor told his brakeman about this. He does, in fact, tell him he thinks his worst nightmares come true, but inexplicably, after he asked the brakeman to look at the corpse, which I don't even know why he did that, it's a weird choice to me, it turns out the old dinosaur is still alive. Or at least someone is still alive, as the person in the costume starts wiggling his fingers. Plus, all the blood is gone, which is extremely suspicious, but the conductor chalks it all up as a practical joke before handing Jackson over to Mitchie, who promptly takes him back to one of the train's bunks to nail him. So basically, everyone in this friend group is f***ing everyone else. College!
Yeah, it seems like Doc, that real douchey guy, and Mitchie, they are together, but they have a bit of an open relationship. So they're willing to go sleep with anyone in that friend group or anyone they would like. She's doing this as a bit of revenge, though. She sees her boyfriend head off with the other girls and is like, well, if they're going to do it, I might as well do it too. It is curious that the killer was able to remove the body and clean up all the blood in that short period of time.
With no one noticing. This is a big hole in this, for sure.
Yeah, this moment is a bit sketchy, but it works, I guess. And so they go up to one of those, like, sleeper car things, the ones where they're on top of each other, and she lays down, kind of like ready for him to go to work here.
Yeah, they're about to be on top of each other, all right.
Yeah, he takes out a hand, and
he puts a hand on her, and by that he literally puts a hand on her, a severed hand that he pulls out of his sleeve.
Yeah, she mentions it's a bit cold.
I actually like this line. This is pretty good. She's so into making this happen that she just brushes it off.
Well, you know what they say. Cold hands, warm heart.
But then she realizes what's up.
Yeah, then she sees that hand is severed from a body, and she's about to let out a big scream, and the killer covers her mouth and ends her by slitting her throat. We've got kill number 3 of the movie here. Mitchie is gone.
She is. Now, not one to be left out of all this f***ing, we see Copperfield make a move on Jamie Lee Curtis in our next scene. He asks her,
Do you believe in magic?
Before making a rose appear and levitate, and then disappearing himself. And I am willing to bet all the money I have that David Copperfield has actually tried to pick up women this way. Or maybe I just want this to be true, but I feel like 100% certain this has happened.
Oh, it's absolutely true. He has done this before. I'm sure he's made lots of things appear for women.
Do you believe in magic?
Yeah. Now, when does he do that and produces what's the line? Yeah, like that's the...
He waves his hand, all of a sudden it's just out.
Yeah, it just pops out. Yeah. I think he's got to wait until she's confirmed consent before that's the way. But
I hope she wants to see his magic wand, and then poof, there it is.
He's in those silk yellow underwear, and
like everybody else apparently.
Yes.
Yeah. Now Jamie Lee is charmed by this, but her tender moment is ruined by who else? Doc, who swoops in and tells her that Mo is really sorry and wants to talk to her. But of course we know, as does Doc, that Mo has his hands full with some chesty blonde. Or at least he would have his hands full if he wasn't so chivalrous. And as if we needed more proof that Doc is a huge asshole, he starts heckling David Copperfield at his next magic show.
Yeah, Doc's on fire here. They're making him the most unlikable character by a lot.
He's a first-class douchebag is what he is.
Yeah, they are trying to set up like a cheer for when he gets taken out. They really are making us hate him. We're going to get some more Copperfield, which is great. Doc's unhappy because he needs to be the star of the show, and he does not like this magician taking the attention of all of the members of the train.
No, and Copperfield just clowns Doc here, dazzling the room with his magic and even sarcastically asking if anyone can make him disappear. But it's not until after making his oddly lanky assistant reappear in the middle of the car, after first teleporting through it to stick the landing on a blind how many fingers trick, that Copperfield gets the rapturous applause he deserves. Unfortunately, Doc is too busy being freaked out by Mo's suddenly dead body to be properly put in his place, and if he thinks that's bad, when he finds Jamie Lee Curtis in a minute and learns that Mitchie's dead too, he really goes off the rails. Pun intended.
Yeah, shit just starts falling apart here. The conductor is trying to find Jamie Lee Curtis and get her to safety because he has found Mitchie dead as well. So now he knows there's 2 dead people on the train. Well, all of this is happening, like you said, Mo Jamie Lee Curtis's boyfriend.
He's just dead all of a sudden.
Ends up, getting like cut in the heart or stabbed in the heart. And this one was kind of out of nowhere. I felt like I wonder if there was a shot of it happening, but we don't see it, or like they cut it out later. But it was kind of confusing because we have Doc freaking out and carrying him through the train and asking for help. But everyone's too intoxicated and thinks everything's a joke from him, so nobody helps. He's panicking, and then Jamie Lee Curtis shows up to try to help too, and she's panicking. Aren't these like fourth-year med students? Shouldn't they know what to do if someone is harmed?
Well, I mean, that's fair in a sense, but at the same time, they are trapped on a train and someone is murdering their closest friends. I think it's understandable that they wouldn't be like fucking all business like surgery robots. They're probably going to be affected by this.
I guess, but just the response was such a horrible panic that the only way to save your friend is to stop that bleeding and prevent him from bleeding out. And they're just like running around and increasing the amount of blood that's pouring out of this guy, right? Like you're fair. Just like, I don't fucking understand.
They're not stabilizing him at all.
No, they do nothing. They just yell and scream, and they don't even like, eventually they like open his shirt and they're like, oh, and they try to cover him, but it's too late because clearly this wound has hit him in the heart. So we've got a third man down.
Yeah, well, almost. We're sort of like 2.5 because he doesn't really know about the lizard guy for sure. But with those 2.5 confirmed dead bodies, the conductor decides to hit the brakes, which almost causes a derailment. Speaking of going off the rails, he quickly ushers the party guests off the train, where Doc wonders aloud why all this is happening to his friends, but really to him because he's a self-absorbed douchebag. Jamie Lee Curtis has pretty much put it all together at this point. This death stems from the prank they pulled 4 years ago. In fact, after visiting that pledge Kenny in the hospital, she learned that he had killed someone years earlier, a traumatic event that they brought back to the surface when they tried to have him f*** that corpse. Kenny is the killer. And as soon as Doc hears this, he knows exactly who the killer is disguised as. David Copperfield. Wait, what?
Yeah. This whole scene is interesting, right? They actually act quite reasonably here. Like often in a horror movie, no one makes a good decision, but the conductor actually gets everyone off. They do a head count, and then they send the porters through the train with weapons to try to clear it and find where the killer is or where they might be.
And do they do either of those things?
They don't find the killer.
No,
of course they don't. They do clear everyone out, but because they haven't identified who it is.
Doc has.
Well, Doc has identified. To Doc's defense, the only two people who are not a part of the regular party are the two members of the magical crew. And he's convinced that it's David Copperfield. He doesn't like him because he is handsome and taking away the attention of other members of the train. His response, though, is not to go after Copperfield, but to go take Jamie Lee Curtis and lock themselves in a cabin?
Yeah, man. The idea is the killer won't be able to get to them. But what about the other passengers, Jamie Lee asks? Don't they deserve to be warned? Doc basically says fuck him, thus cementing himself as the undisputed king of the douchebags one last time before he gets decapitated. I will not miss him.
No, this scene is interesting. We actually get some decent shots of him trying to clear the train cabin. He sort of goes into some cupboards, and we think there's going to be a jump scare and all of this stuff. And then we have him realize that the killer's probably under the seat, and he goes to go under the seat to check when he forgot to check his own seat, and the killer grabs his foot, yanks him down, and they have a bit of a battle, but in the end he loses. The killer does take him down and store his decapitated body in the storage compartment above.
Yeah, and we should mention Jamie Lee Curtis left the car. Like, she was so upset with his wanton disregard for all the other human lives, some of whom are also their friends, that she just like fucked off basically.
Well, she headed to go tell the conductor that they think it is David Copperfield, right? So that they can like rally everyone around to stop Copperfield.
Yeah, and they do make one more half-hearted attempt to convince the rest of us that David Copperfield is the killer by having him admonish his assistant for not staying in the car while brandishing some swords with an intense, angry look on his face. But at this point, I don't think the audience is buying this magician theory because, again, it's patently ridiculous. He looks nothing like the guy we saw 4 years earlier. There's no fucking way. Kenny does not have that glorious fucking hair that Copperfield has. I'm not buying it. No one else is either. Except Jamie Lee Curtis is still in on this theory. And after selling the conductor on it, she goes to pull Doc out of his locked car, which gives us one of the only good jump scares of the movie. Actually, two, as first Doc's headless body comes toppling out of an overhead compartment, followed moments later by his head. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I was actually, when they come to the car and they find it full of blood and like feathers and cloth and stuff from the battle that's in there. They've actually done a really good job of setting up the setting.
Yeah, the staging
to this
is
reveal.
nice.
The
Yeah.
staging is really, really good. And I actually, like, at this point, I'm kind of like, they've done a decent job with the makeup and the effects that they've used in this to make it feel reasonably realistic, right? And I'm fully in on that until the head rolls out of the compartment.
Right, you didn't like the head?
It would look so fake compared to the rest of the stuff. And
a head's tricky, right? We've seen some bad heads in our day.
And it was unfortunate because it was hilarious. In my notes, I write a compliment, and then like 20 seconds later, I'm like, oh no, how did that happen? But overall, I thought it actually did a pretty good job, and that jump scare is pretty decent here.
Yeah, man, it's good. They're 2 in a row, not bad. Now, the conductor, following Jamie Lee and Doc's killer magician theory, subtly gets everyone, including the magician's assistant, out of the car David Copperfield is set up in and puts them in one place. A few of the frat boys are restless, though, and want to enforce some vigilante justice.
You aim to kill him. Before you go, you take a look at the bodies of some of your friends. Is it worth that, son? Is it worth it?
How about the old conductor getting them to stand down with nothing more than the wisdom of age in his weathered, craggly face?
He does a good job here, right? He prevents some more killing. They believe they've locked up the killer because they've locked Copperfield in there. So they think that they've got that contained for now and all should be good and safe. They do put a porter to guard Jamie Lee Curtis just to keep her safe. And
well, yeah, she's the one that is not with all the passengers in the other car. The conductor put her into a different car to sleep, which makes sense because I'm sure after seeing several of her best friends dead, she'll have no trouble getting some shut-eye.
This part is weird. Far too often, she is trying to go to sleep after very traumatic events here. I think maybe some coffee or something to keep her awake and like distracted would be a better solution.
Well, unfortunately, the killer still manages to get in her car. We know he has a passkey from earlier when he locked Jackson's body in the bathroom. And before you know it, we've got a good old-fashioned chase scene as he makes multiple attempts to kill Jamie Lee before eventually cornering her in like a cage stockroom.
Yeah, this is actually pretty well done.
I agree,
like
yeah.
this scene. We get some shots of a couple people. We get the porter dead. He's got one of the swords rammed through him. So they're still kind of trying to portray our magician as the killer. What I did think was funny is that they locked David Copperfield up by just using a lock and a chain. I thought,
as if that's going to contain his magic. Come on.
Exactly. I thought that was kind of ironic, right? Because he was such a great magician. And so clearly Copperfield now has broken out, or that's what they're trying to say to us. And he has also made his way into the car with Jamie Lee Curtis. They do have a kind of fun, like, chase, break windows, run away scene, and it culminates in the conductor's car where they have that lock room, that cage room, where the conductor must keep all of the, like, most important documents and expenses in the train. It's where the safe is and stuff. She locks herself in, and then the killer does something cool, which is takes this,
I love this. Yeah.
giant metal rod and starts punching out the lights in the car, making it dark and adding to the like effect and tone.
Yeah, and then he starts punching in. He's running that fucking sharp metal pole through the holes in the cage trying to stab her. But it's actually Jamie Lee Curtis who lands the first blow. She finds like one of those like fucking they're like a big pin that people used to like tack documents onto.
Yeah, it's a paper holder, but it's really a very large spike that you just put your documents on. And she manages to get that when the killer is trying to get her into that cage and jams it right into the killer's face.
Oh, yeah, man. Now, she keeps the pressure on here and eventually manages to send him flying out an open door and off the train completely. So now she really can get some rest. And shortly after the conductor tells Vanity they'll be arriving at the station in 15 minutes, we see Jamie Lee Curtis sleeping peacefully. Oh, fuck, he's there in the window.
Yeah, this is actually quite good. I feel like this might be a famous shot. The like image of the masked person like upside down in the window while she's sleeping is really good jump scare.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, you can go through a lot of horror movies and find exactly this where someone's relaxing and then all of a sudden there's someone in the window, usually masked, and this is that. It's kind of, you know, it's familiar, but it's still effective. Now, Jamie Lee Curtis decides to take a little walk around the train to hopefully find some answers. And I'd like to criticize her for doing that, going off on her own in what is still a very creepy setting. But she does legitimately think this guy is dead, so we can't really be upset about it. In fact, it totally makes sense that she would go searching for answers by looking through the magician's things. But she finds a lot more than answers as one of those boxes pops open to reveal David Copperfield's corpse. So good night, Sigma Phi. There will be no encore.
Yeah, so we are now coming full circle to her realizing that it's not Copperfield, but it is the assistant.
Out fucking time, Jesus, come on.
Oh my God. She finds a document that kind of gives it away. She finds almost like a scrapbook kind of thing and opens it up and can see what's happening here. She now knows. But I was still confused about why she was alone and why the conductor was allowing her to go alone.
Yeah, well, she makes a stranger decision here in a second. As with her terror renewed, Jamie Lee Curtis goes running through the train right past any number of people who could help her and into a dark, vacant car. Well, almost vacant. She sees the train's brakeman sitting silently at a table with his hands over his face and thinks nothing of it. In fact, she decides to join him. And this is where we finally get the big reveal. Kenny was not, in fact, legendary musician David Copperfield, but instead his assistant. Can you believe it?
I'd only figured this out like 20 minutes into the movie. I was like, oh. I didn't dislike it though. Like I thought it made sense in terms of like how you were going to make that work. I thought it would have been a little better if they were able to hide it more, especially because the costuming and the things that they used to create the atmosphere lent to a like sneakier reveal. But this is definitely our Scooby-Doo moment here.
Definitely. And the weirdest part of this exchange for me is they double down on the magic stuff.
I never knew you liked magic.
I watched you tonight. You liked him.
No. Kenny, you're better than he is. I'm sure you're better than him.
I am. He didn't know how to cut a woman into pieces.
What?
Yeah, that line I wrote in my notes too. It is fucked up.
But it makes no sense. I don't understand. How does that prove that he's a better magician?
Well,
also, why are they doubling down on magic here?
Because this movie is all about demonstrating Copperfield's skills. This is where they're going back to when they put that little nugget in that he was a magician earlier, right? Now, obviously, that line, he didn't know how to cut a woman into pieces, was like just showing that he's completely fucked,
insane,
right?
Yeah,
he's just insane. Now, this is where she needs to get the upper hand on him, and she gives him the kiss me Kenny.
Well, but he demands it, though. It's him that instigates it, and she does kiss him, but that immediately sends him back to that fateful night 4 years ago and triggers the same response as he begins spinning wildly. His painful screams alert the conductor, who rushes in and clubs him with a shovel, sending his body out of the train for real this time, and falling down to the ground below. Way down, it turns out, as they were going over a bridge at that exact moment, so dude drops like 10 stories at least, hitting the ground hard before sliding into a river where his dead body floats away. That last part surprised me. I did not expect to actually see the body hit the ground, and the gratuitous thump we get when it happens made me laugh out loud. I guess they really wanted us to know he was dead because goddamn, he hits that thing like a fucking sack of potatoes.
Yeah, I was surprised that they did this. Just in general, I was surprised that they, one, made it so convenient that they were over a bridge.
Yeah.
So we get the conductor sliding in. Somehow the car door opens. He knocks the killer out of the door, over and off a bridge and down into that water. The fall was hilarious. And then
I can't believe they fucking showed him it.
Yeah.
That never happens.
And then the body sort of like slides into some icy water, and we have to assume that they are dead. There is no other thing we can take from that.
Him hitting the ground is pretty fucking definitive.
But we know that there is a Terror Train 2.
Well, I didn't know that.
Well, I know that there is a Terror Train 2. So I was kind of curious, and I knew this before because when I
could not have survived that fall.
No, which is why I thought it was a strange choice. Like, I thought maybe they would leave it open, like many good horror movies do, where I could see you hitting him out of the train and just having him fly into the bushes or something, rather than like fall to a 10-story death.
You just see him go out of the train.
Yeah.
But you don't see him die, and then like the mask is like laying in the snow or something.
Yeah, exactly. I was curious why we didn't have one of those moments. I thought it might have been a better way to end it because we head right into the credits after this fucking corpse starts going down that water.
Yeah, we do. There's one more shot of like this train speeding away, but that's it. It's credit time. And that brings us to the end. I don't know, man. This, like, I had seen this before. I had forgotten some things about it. it's just a weird movie to me.
I think the insertion of David Copperfield in such a prominent role that he and the conductor plays makes this feel really strange, right?
It's throwing me off for sure. Yeah,
it makes it hard to sort of talk about in terms of a like complete horror movie, because the magic scenes are really fun, but I think almost distracts from the like tone of it.
Okay.
Because it's not super believable that you think he's the killer.
It's not even a little bit believable for me. No.
Right? But I think that is what they thought.
You got to have some people on board that aren't with the party, so to speak.
Yes.
So he's the winner
one
for that,
yeah.
I guess. Well, at this point, we should just transition to our ratings because we're clearly sharing things that we liked and didn't like and thought were good or bad. So the way we always do this, we have to move on a scale of 1 to 10 2 times. 1 to 10 for how bad it is, 1 to 10 for how enjoyable it is. And the goal is to find movies that are a 10 out of 10 on both scales, or what we call the Crit 20. And for me, like I said, it's a very weird movie, I feel. I think a lot of that has to do with the setting. The setting is a strange place to stage a movie. I almost feel like someone had the idea first. What if we make a movie that's entirely on a train and they just kind of wrote around it? It's good for the claustrophobic, no escape feeling. But the fact that it takes so long for people to realize there's a killer on the loose kind of cancels that out in a way. Like they're so boxed in that it should be in some ways impossible for the killer to do these things. And that I have a problem with. The premise of this, Kenny coming back and killing people on this train, makes sense from a traumatized person seeks revenge standpoint. But if you start thinking about it logistically, I feel like there are some holes. Now, here's the biggest one for me. How does Kenny become David Copperfield's assistant? Was this like an insane long game and he's been working for him for years, just taping his back week after week after week? Or is there some kind of magician's assistant directory that Copperfield hit up when he got this gig and this is their first time together? Like, does Kenny book the magician himself and tell him, no problem, we've got a girl here you can use? Then you start thinking about how he's able to move through so many cars, past people, moving dead bodies around. He gets Jackson's body out of the bathroom, like we said, cleans it, cleans the lizard costume, gets in the lizard costume, gets back in the bathroom. And at no point, David Copperfield is like, where the fuck is my assistant? Like, it just doesn't really add up for me, spatial and like temporally. So that's an issue. The acting is not terrible. Jamie Lee Curtis is good, although it's very well-worn territory for her. The conductor was good, but it gets real thin for me after that. The kills were a real mixed bag. The jump scares with Doc's body and head were good. The killer chasing Jamie Lee was good, especially the scene in the cage stockroom. And I also like the cold hands, warm heart line where he killed Mitchie. But some of the other ones were so-so, like Mo, Jackson, the first guy with the sword. I think the problem I'm having is the movie is called Terror Train, and I'm not totally sure there was enough terror. So in my mind, I'm kind of flipping back and forth between an 8 bad and a 9 bad. And gun to my head right now, I'm going to go with the 8. What do you think?
I think those are all really fair descriptions and feelings. I thought that it was a bit too predictable. I think
that's the problem too.
There was too much exposition, and the way that they've set it up and even the like Scooby-Doo-ness of it was really, really clear really early. I hadn't thought about how they had become the assistant. That was kind of a good point. I do think it is the last option you said, which was they had booked it themselves.
Kenny set it up.
Kenny had set it up themselves, and maybe Kenny had said, although it did seem like they had worked together for a while before, so I don't know how that is. I also had a problem with the pace.
Yep.
Like there were times where it dragged a lot, and a lot of those like insertion scenes of the conductor and the other employees
talking RVs.
Yeah, it just seemed like it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I thought that there was a mixed bag on makeup work. I thought most of it was okay, but it doesn't hold up to modern like special effects and makeup for sure. And I mean modern practical effects, not digital. I also didn't like the ending.
Really?
I felt like it should have been more open-ended.
Right.
Like I didn't want there to be that resolution.
That definitive thump when he
I didn't like that as the way that it went. So I had it as an 8 bad too. Like a straight up 8 in my notes.
But now, how enjoyable did you find it on a scale of 1 to 10?
So it was magic. Is I want to describe the movie. No, I just thought that part was really fun. I like the David Copperfield stuff. It did a lot of it. I actually really like the setting. You were having some trouble with it being on the train as a like believable thing, but I like the idea of the train. I quite like steam trains as well. So all of the like, me and bridges and trains, like
bridges, yeah, exactly.
These are things that I enjoy. So having it be there brought some enjoyment to me. I agree that the practicality of achieving all of the things that the killer did on this train is not great, and I think they could have done more to build a panic within the train. It wasn't something that I would write home about. Like, it wasn't standout for me, but it was one that I didn't regret watching in any way.
Okay.
I enjoyed the watch. I wish they made some other choices, and I think that they could have, but I had it as a 7. So it was fine. I wasn't upset that I watched it. Would I take another peek? If someone hadn't seen it and really wanted to watch it, I'd watch it with them. I wouldn't go back there on my own.
On your own, yeah. That's fair. Yeah. I totally get that. For me, things I like, Jamie Lee Curtis good, although she plays similar characters in a lot of much better stuff, so that kind of dings it for me. The Old Conductor was good, although I think there are a lot of other actors I would have liked more in the role, if that makes sense. I love Vanity. I'm always happy to see her in anything and was thrilled that she survived, but not a lot for her to do here besides, walk around and look pretty. A couple of decent jump scares, like I already said, but if I'm being honest, by far my favorite part of this movie is the David Copperfield cameo. I'm serious, man. His magic interludes kind of fuck up the pacing, and I'm 99% sure most of the tricks were accomplished with film magic and not performance magic, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But they're still entertaining, and I found his intense stares to be unintentionally hilarious. It was a fucking weird cameo, but I truly, truly enjoyed it. Unfortunately, there wasn't much for me beyond that. I did not love the killer, like the actor who played them. In fact, I didn't like a few of the actors. We already mentioned that. The pacing was weird. I think you're right. It takes so long for them to realize what's happening that we don't get a lot of time where there's that panic. And even when it's happening, the only person who really seems panicked is Jamie Lee Curtis and like Doc a little bit. Everyone else is kind of like, fuck this. Let's go get these guys. You're not going to lock us in a train. Like, it wasn't the kind of widespread...
We needed hysteria.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say hysteria that you would hope to get, which that would have really caused some energy to be bouncing off the walls in that confined environment. So I don't have this very high, but there were a couple of good deaths / jump scares. I liked some of the staging that we already kind of talked about. And on the strength of the David Copperfield cameo, I also am giving this a 7 enjoyable.
No, we didn't. We're both 15s. Holy shit. Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I do not think we're going to agree about the beer for this episode. How did you feel about this beer?
I would say this is a good, well-made, like standard West Coast IPA. Like this is got your sort of malt forward with classic citrus bitterness, right? Orange peel kind of bitterness on it. It was easy for me to drink, and I would definitely try other ones from them. They have a pale ale, a hazy pale ale, that is probably more what I prefer drinking right now, and I'd be interested to try that one out. And compare it to this one, but I liked it. I've had other Railway City beers, and they've all been good in the past. I definitely recommend if you're in the St. Thomas area or you have a chance to try out some Railway City stuff.
Yeah, a lot of their stuff is available in our LCBOs here in Ontario, or possibly you can get it other ways. I'm not really sure. We actually are going to agree on this beer to some level as well. I also found it to be just a classic example of like a standard IPA, like West Coast IPA, which means, of course, that I did not enjoy it. But it tastes similar enough to other kind of like highly rated West Coast IPAs that I feel confident saying that if you are a person who enjoys West Coast IPAs, you will absolutely enjoy this beer. Like yourself, I have tried several other Railway City beers. They have a stout that's very tasty. They have, or maybe they used to have, they kind of rebranded some stuff like that, so I don't know if they're still making all the same stuff, but they had a kind of like Mexican style lager that I really enjoyed. Lots of stuff to choose from, so check out Railway City. The brewery itself is pretty cool from what I recall. It's been a while. Maybe they've renovated since then. I don't even know, but we had a good time visiting it. Yeah, not for me this one, but they have a lot of other good stuff, so check them out.
Awesome.
Now, speaking of checking things out, 2 weeks from now, we're going to be checking out a movie that neither of us have seen, but it is a giant, massive, sweeping epic of the sci-fi adventure genre. We're going to be watching the original Dune from the 80s, Fucking David Lynch.
David Lynch
is the director of Dune, yes.
Really?
Yeah, he did not have a good experience on it.
Ooh. And isn't Patrick Stewart in this as well?
P. Stew, as we know him, is also in this.
Ooh.
And Sting.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking Sting.
Yes, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Never seen it. You haven't seen it, right?
I have not seen
No.
it. I actually just finished reading the book.
Oh, hey now.
So I'm going to have that in my mind. It's always a bit of a dangerous territory. I didn't know we were going to be watching it for the pod, but reading a book and then watching a movie usually leads to greater disappointment than just watching a movie.
Well, I feel pretty confident saying you will be disappointed by this because it was not well received. It is a legendary bomb on just a massive scale. So I am very excited for this. It's going to be a big deal. Long movie, though, so we're going to have to pack a lot into our, usually we go like 1 hour here. So
yeah, so we're going to have to try to be efficient in our commentary for that one.
Yeah. We'll try to be more efficient than fucking David Lynch was. I think his original version was like 4 hours long or some shit. So
wow. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that'll be 2 weeks from now. Dune. Before then, if you have not already, please follow us on social media at the BMB Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
Feel free to send us emails, thebmbpodcast@gmail.com.
Absolutely. We love to hear from you. We want to thank Now Showing on Instagram for this recommendation. A lot of fun with this one today. So a very good recommendation for us. We are kind of all finished with season 4 here, but we're starting to plan out season 5. So if you have a request that you want us to do, by all means, reach out to us through social media or through our Gmail. But thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll join us in 2 weeks for Dune. Until then, I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
And we'll see you next time on Bad Movies and Beer.
Keep it magic.
Nice. Yeah. Copperfield. The boys and girls of Sigma Phi. Some will live and some will die.